You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObsessive.com.
The biggest news of this entire week is certainly something that came out of the Daily Show news. I think we talked a couple weeks back about how I was really thinking about just burying my head in the sand and not paying attention to anything election related this year. Just was miserable thinking about it.
Yeah, good
Now I've
luck.
changed my tune. Now I will be watching
All
Daily
right.
Show every Monday night. Jon Stewart is back as a one night a week host. He will executive produce the rest of the week, but they convinced him to come back after his Apple TV show fell through.
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know if you sound excited. I don't know if I'm excited. I've always had this view that maybe Jon Stewart was very smart to step away when he did, and I
Yeah.
think it was the summer of 2015. Um, and he was doing the Apple show. We did hit on that before, how that got canceled. It seemed like maybe because of some of the topics they wanted to get into, and in some ways, this feels like, well, you could say the stars are aligning, but in other ways, it feels like Daily Show's over here going like, we can't figure out who to host our show, and Jon Stewart's over here like, well, I just got fired.
Yeah. They did certainly, I think, align in terms of his availability, this being election year. He talked at length when he left in 2015 that he was just emotionally and physically exhausted, so he didn't want to do it for a whole week. So they're, having these sort of fill-in spots the rest of the week. So it does sort of align for him to come back. But
The
I
biggest
mean,
thing the biggest thing I'm curious about is in the background, there's some stuff about Roy Wood Jr.
hmm,
And he ultimately left the show because they've been doing this thing with rotating hosts. And I've at least gotten the impression that he wanted to be the host. And
yeah.
for one reason or another, they didn't want to make him the host, or they didn't want to compensate him enough to be the host. And here, I don't know the details, and I veer like I don't want to veer into gossiping about it. But I do wonder about that. And then in terms of the Daily Show as an institution, at some point you're going to need a new host. And whatever
Yes.
you thought
Yeah.
of Trevor Noah, he did manage to kind of make that show his own. Um, so yeah, I'm curious what comes next. But for the
Yeah,
moment,
I
Jon
am too.
Stewart.
This is definitely not a long-term thing. This is definitely not a full-time thing for Jon Stewart. He's come out and said that the piece I read said that they have tried to get big names in the past, Amy Schumer, other big comedic names to come in and do this, and they've just been unsuccessful. So I think they're just looking at, well, we can now sort of bought ourselves a year where we can do Jon Stewart and a rotating series of our sort of on the site reporters as the other night anchors of this show, get the ratings up, get people interested in it again, and then we can hopefully get a big name in sometime in 2025.
Yeah, I guess I just part of me feels like give it to Roy Wood Jr. What are you guys
Yeah.
doing? And I'm fairly confident that he did want to do it. I don't know. He was on the Pablo Torre pod and they were talking a little bit, and he didn't directly say that, but
Yeah.
I think at one point he said something like, "They know where to find me." So like I don't know why that didn't work out, and one gets the feeling that Comedy Central didn't want him to be the host, which I don't know. I think he'd be a pretty good host.